Yep.
Who would like to start first?
I mean, I got ours up and going. We can go first, or if
Sure.
you got it up and going, Zenzi, however you want to do it. We didn't really discuss this part, but here.
Go for it, and I can always tag in.
All right, sounds good. I'll start sharing here. All right, so let's make sure that I am on the correct one here. So this week, Zenzi and I were to work on this particular issue. As a user, I want to see a welcoming prompt to add my first item if the list is empty to help me get oriented to how the app works. So we'll just go ahead and hop on over to wherever I have the app. There we go. So upon page load, going to be hanging out here. Just added some basic text. It's by no means meant to stay there, but just to kind of add a little bit more direction and start the process of creating the welcome screen and a message. So welcome to whatever we're going to call it list. It's here to add more organization to your grocery list or lists. To start, either create a brand new list with a button there or enter your 3-word token if you already have it. So we'll go ahead and create a new list. Upon click, we got a little pop-up here that also mentions that your list is successfully created. Your new token is there. You go ahead and you see that it's in your local storage. Click OK. And now we are on the list view as we're supposed to be. We did have a thing where we were redirecting it to the add item list, but then we're reminded that to stick with what the actual game plan is supposed to be. Upon getting here, this is your list. It uses the token, then your grocery list, and then we're currently letting the user know that it's empty, and then have a little button encouraging them to click to add their first item, which then takes you to add item. You can go ahead, add your goldfish, submit, and now your list has an item in it. As was discussed earlier in the process, just kind of the back and forth of getting the token to actually be in our Fire store. It currently enters the Fire store upon adding the first item to the grocery list. Before that, the token only exists in local storage. And then we can go ahead and just to demonstrate that the other part is still functioning correctly. When we head back to the user screen and we want to add the token, we can go ahead and do that, and it will take us to our grocery list.
Yeah, that looks great.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Zenzi, or anything we should address otherwise?
Nothing really to add. I think that the largest part was trying to understand the amended ticket, just because the initial instructions were pretty clear, but because of the way Firebase and Firestore works, adding a empty item was impossible. So we had to think about whether you really needed, whether you really were hoping to see on the at the persistence layer an empty kind of just an empty token, or whether you just wanted some conditional rendering. So that was kind of the biggest issue, you know, moving forward, was that we had the initial part working relatively quickly, but we just needed some kind of clarification with that, and we weren't sure what was really intended. So other than that, I think things went well.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like we also, at least for me, I learned a lot about, and we'll get into this in the retros, but yeah, just time management is really, really important, and being able to kind of work through that and really know that I do, like I personally, I'll speak for me, have a little more control over how my time does get used. And it just actually was a really helpful aspect to this whole process and felt really good. So
I'm glad to hear that. You know, I also for myself, you know, recognizing that I confuse you both as well, because, you know, a lot of it is clarifying requirements, and, you know, the team that I observed before had done it a certain way, and there are certain use cases. So it's really helped, like, for us to have these discussions. So, you know, I think the learning from it is, let's make sure we time box it, right? Like, if you spend the first half an hour or an hour and you're like, this is impossible, and that's when it's like, oh, you hit that hour, let's ask someone for help. Don't go beyond that 1 hour, and go back to, hey, is what she's adding like really helpful, or she's confusing me? And I would love that feedback as well, because as a product owner, and for me also managing this project is like, I don't know. Like, I really don't know either. So let's make sure we'll be clear and stuff. But it's really great. I appreciate both of you sticking through it and like really keeping at it. Yeah, so great work in that sense, and great learning. Should we move to James?
yeah.
Sure. So, you know, I obviously went through a few iterations of what I'm about to present to you as well. Share screen, where are you? Okay. All right, so for us, we're working on issue 8 here. As an issue, I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased, so the app can learn how often I buy different items. All right, pretty straightforward until we kind of ran into you know, a few like maybe edge cases or thinking through some different user flow. User is able to tap a checkbox or similar UI element to mark an item in the list as purchased. That item should be shown as checked for 24 hours after the purchase is made, i.e. we assume the user does not need to buy the item again for at least 1 day. Okay. So, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take this out real fast. So what we have here is check boxes that persist for 24 hours. They do, up until Yenli's suggestion that I saw this morning, they do allow you to check it and uncheck it. But if you were to like uncheck it and refresh, the logic will still see that it is less than 24 hours old, and it'll apply the checked feature again. But Yenli made a suggestion, and I want, you know, so we were going to talk about adding this disabled feature to now when you check, it becomes disabled. And I think that's kind of cool. I like it and I get it. And then in 24 hours, you know, all of these will be open again. But I do, like I mentioned in my comment, I do have a concern about, like, I accidentally clicked apple juice when I meant cream cheese. And now what, you know? But maybe we address that in later stories, or maybe there's something else that I'm not considering right now that maybe you guys can help me consider. So I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if you guys need to see any of the code or anything, but I feel like we dove into that midweek pretty well. So
Does the other pair have any questions regarding the code? Because, you know, you want to approach this as potentially, if you are going to own it and need to work on it, then
right.
It'll be helpful if you understand it.
I mean, I know that James, you mentioned earlier in the week, I believe, that you and Anna you were looking at a more complex way of doing the timing and then found something that was not as complex. Would you mind showing like what you ended up coming to and just kind of a quick run through on how it like bops around in the code?
100%. Right. It was that what you're talking about was my inexperience with timestamps and how JavaScript allows you to apply a few different functions like to local string and to some other ones I don't remember. And so when I was first digging into that, you can kind of get a bunch of different formats based on what you do with, instead of date.now, I think you can do JavaScript, time something, and you can get a whole bunch of different formats. But so that night after on an iPad, I just was sitting there Googling about timestamps, and I ran into date.now, which is just a big number in milliseconds that have elapsed since 1970, January 1st, 1970. And once I realized that, I was like, well, that's awesome. That's a super simple, easy number that I can wrap my brain around, because all I have to do is compare what the time that's happening, right now, the number of milliseconds that's happening right now as the component loads, to whenever we sent back to the database. Where is it? Right here. This one gets sent back as elapsed milliseconds, and that's so whenever they mark it purchased, you get a snapshot of when or how many milliseconds have passed since 1970, January 1st, and then you compare those, and you just simple math here. Current last milliseconds minus last purchased, is that greater or less than, I'm sorry, this 86,400,000 milliseconds, which is 1 day.
Yeah, that looks way easier than some things that I've come across in the past. So
yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, when I first read the criteria, I was excited because I was like, this is going to be really challenging. It's been challenging in a completely unexpected way, which is thinking through the keeping check boxes checked or not checked depending on what the user does. But this part, just deciding when a item is 24 hours old or not, that was easy. So.
That's great. So another thing, like moving forward, you could also install a time package to help you with this. So that's also open as well. But I'm glad that you dug through and went through and used the JavaScript functions. So that's like a good learning. And thanks for sharing that. So the other part that I want to address about the checkbox that you did mention, this all comes down to interaction design, right? Like how people interact with the app. So when you make a choice, so when you make a choice to say that they can uncheck, then your code needs to implement it in a way to address that, right? So if you allow them to uncheck, then you need to follow through and say, oh, if they unchecked, then the database needs to update. And if that database updates and if they recheck, then you need to address that. So that is the usability part that I'm bringing up. It's not that I'm telling you, you should implement a certain function, but if you choose one, follow through with the interaction so that it's more clear to the user. Because if you uncheck and I come back and it's checked again, then it's like, whoa, is there a ghost to help me about this item?
Right.
So a lot of those things to think about, as an engineer to do that. And I think for this issue is we're saying to do it for 24 hours and to freeze it is to simplify the issue so that as you're building blocks, right? Like when you think about it, the interaction of allowing them to uncheck, what kind of data are you going to store? And how does that inform how later you're going to do estimates, right? Because this is a smart shopping list, not just a to-do and that you're done with it. yeah, so I hope that helps, that I suggested that.
I like it. I'm just assuming that in later stories, we'll have an opportunity to readdress that functionality particularly.
Mhm.
So for now, I'm happy to wrap it up the way it is.
Mhm.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're on that really this week,
Mhm.
looking at how to store multiple timestamps.
Yeah,
So we can, okay.
potentially. Yeah, potentially. So I don't want to tell you that because of what I did for my app and the decision, that is not a way that you should approach it. So, you know, moving forward as a team, you should decide those kind of functionality.
Right,
So
right.
when an issue is given to you with a certain acceptance criteria, there are room for you to decide how you want to implement it. And when you make that decision as a team, then you can decide the interactions that follow through after that.
Okay.
Yeah, and also like I think in office hours I talked to James and Jessica about this, but as a team I want to make sure that, you know, we're building this app as an exercise to practice the engineering cadence and communication and collaboration. So it's good that you want to solve these coding problems or these challenges and want to fix everything, but we want to fit in the communication and collaboration part. So any parts that, like James, you're saying, like, I don't like this functionality. And it's like, I hear you and I think it's great. Let's file some of that under nice to have things you want to change, under like refactoring or miscellaneous opportunities. This project is yours to keep working on for as long as you want, even after this cohort. So definitely, yeah, let's make a note of it and keep track of it. And then, you know, if you want to spend extra time, great. And if you don't, then you can always do this as something to come back to. And this is for everybody.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, really great. I love it. A lot of fun. Really good discussion. Should we move
Awesome.
on to retros?
I think so.
Okay, looks like Yenli and Jessica started already, which is great. But for the rest of us slackers or not proactive people, we will do 6 minutes now to add our comments. So I will start it now. Just over 2 minutes left.
Oh.
Okay, done. I just had to finish one more line myself, but yeah, press enter, everybody. Okay. Did everyone get a chance to finish?
Sure. I'm so slow.
Me too. I should do what the others do and do it early.
Yeah, I didn't think to. That's my fault.
To be fair,
mean-
I have seen a few live things like this in other settings, so I guess it's a skill. What were you saying, Jessica?
I was gonna say, to be fair, my early was like 3 minutes before our call started, so I wasn't like that on top of it.
Well, to be fair, I'm a very slow writer, so that's why I do it ahead of time, or else I won't have any cards if I have to do it in 6 minutes. I'll be sitting here going, ah!
Okay, let's start with James over here in appreciations.
Sure. So again, I mean, this is kind of like, I think it's probably going to be a continual retro, but just saying thanks to the mentors for really taking time to talk to us through any issues, both either in the PRs or on one of these calls. Really helps to see the perspective from, you know, someone who's been there or more senior or whatever. But it feels great when they talk to you like you're up here almost, and not like talking down to you. So I just want to say thanks for that. Nice.
Okay, and then nice shout out for Jessica.
Oh. Yeah, Jessica, I just love her positivity. How whenever in the PRs or in the Slack or whatever, she always seems to take a special moment just to recognize someone's hard work or whatever. I just want to say thanks. Makes me feel good.
For me, I'm very grateful to Sky and Yenli for like constant communication between the mentors, make sure we're all on the same page. This has been really helpful. Yenli, I feel like you've kind of been in the best way, like a mother hen, keeping all the ducks in a line and kind of like constant communication with the team, which is really great. And Sky, again, for your really thorough and insightful code reviews. And I'm really impressed with overall, like all of the developers, your PRs are so thorough that I'm sure it takes a long time to do, but I think it's probably invaluable between like the other teams coming in and looking or the mentors coming in. Really great. So props for that. James again.
Oh boy. So something that like, and I hope this gets taken the right way. I really appreciate that when our mentors maybe do like lead us astray with whatever, that they own that and they're vocal about like saying, hey, we kind of messed up, and we're gonna do X, Y, and Z to try to fix that. And I appreciate that. That's a great culture to be a part of when everyone can be sort of free to admit their opportunities and not have to like feel judged or whatever for it, Oh, sorry, long guys are here. But thanks for that. I really appreciate that. It's really nice.
Cool, Zenzi.
Just wanted to thank Jessica for kind of letting me experiment and troubleshoot within the code, because I think that it's just kind of nice to feel like you're in a safe space to kind of throw things at the wall and have some things fail and some things work out. And she just is a great partner for doing that. So I was thankful for that.
Nice. Sky?
Yeah, this last week in particular, I really liked how quickly both groups jumped into the issues. Just like even Sunday and then Monday, there was just a lot of really good conversation on Slack and a couple, like hopping on Zoom call and like trying to flesh out like, okay, what are the acceptance criteria? Yeah, it's just good to have that kind of that makes the office hours and the midweek discussions more fruitful, and then we're not like going into Friday going, oh my God, what's going on? So hats off. Y'all both teams did a really great job of being on top of things this week, despite, the challenges that we chucked your way.
Jessica?
Yeah, I'm kind of echoing some of the things that have been said. Just continued availability of the mentors has been amazing to me, as well as their willingness to take advantage of the moments to teach, whether it's regarding code or just the general workflow, how it might look in the real world. Getting those two perspectives have been invaluable to me, and I really appreciate the time that you all have been taking to communicate that stuff to us.
And then Sky. Sorry, Yenli.
So I'm super grateful to Lauren and Sky for jumping in and providing like stellar support when like my job search got really crazy, and also momming a toddler was like taking so much of my time, and for keeping me honest. Also thanks to the team for your patience, because like communication is, I recognize that it's sometimes confusing, and also I make certain assumptions. So I really appreciate your willingness to look at the problem and just keep asking questions. And I really love that. We're constantly having conversations, even though sometimes it seems like what's going on and it's frustrating. So I love that.
Okay, great. I think we're done with this column. On to what went well. It seemed like the pairs were communicating really well with each other. And kind of, I guess what I was thinking of when I wrote that everyone treats each other with great respect is it, like James mentioned, if it's really nice to see or feel like people can just talk about the mistakes they made, and it's like it's appreciated, so I think that was really cool. and the communication happening over the PRs, I think, is getting even better. And what I mean by that is even conversations about code in the PRs, I think looks really great. And that'll be very helpful, hopefully, when applying to jobs, when you have to discuss over text or in person your code. So very cool. Jessica?
Yeah, one of the things that I think went well this week was just straight up working with Zenzi. I had a ton of fun, and I felt like our processing and understanding with each other really, really clicked this week. And yeah, it was fantastic. So I just wanted to let everyone know Zenzi is an awesome partner.
Awesome. James?
Yeah, Anna's not here, but I love pairing with her. We just have fun, number one, and then she's just got like such an awesome perspective, a really great way of asking the right kind of questions to kind of push us into the right direction. And even though we didn't, it was on Monday and Tuesday before our week, like our midweek sync on Wednesday, we didn't have a lot of the right maybe directives. Just trying to troubleshoot things ourselves, but we worked with good faith, and the best we could on the issues in the best way we could. And I just want to say that went really well again. I think we knocked it out in like 30 minutes on each session, like with two things. So it was just a really great flow, and that's due mostly in part to the way that she kind of like steers like the session.
Oh, that's great. Zenzi?
There we go. I wanted to say that one of the other things that went well was just understanding a little bit about the benefits of using Firestore and some of the limitations that it has. I think especially from an interview component, if you're talking about this project, this part and just kind of dipping our toes into what NoSQL has to offer has been really kind of useful and allowed us to kind of talk about it, because we've been having tickets with Firestore from the beginning. So I really kind of like that part.
Oh, great. Sky?
Yeah, good morning. I'm looking for that. Yeah, just as an industry, we had differing ideas of how to interpret the acceptance criteria and how to implement functionality. The discussion and clarifications, they led to a lot of learnings. So I feel like I kind of co-opted appreciations, but it was, I think that went particularly well this week, and I'm excited to see more as the rest of TCL goes forward.
Yanli?
So I really love Jessica's message to the team in terms of like, hey, let's try using Suite Alerts, and then like the team discussion and the decision to go with a common strategy was really great from last week. I'm really impressed by how quickly the pairs kind of took what I shared as in like, oh, how can we improve our demo time? Like you just took it and ran with it, and like you knocked out of the park, because last week we finished our weekly sync in an hour, and it's like, whoa, did we finish that fast? This is awesome.
Nice. So finally, Jessica?
Something that went well for me personally, just moving better with the cadence of how TCL works every week. And also just the clarity of the importance of time management. It's been really, really appreciated to me. And it's just helping me adjust my habits, either working with others or just my own personal habits. It just, yeah, it's been going really well, and I appreciate that.
Great. Okay. And lastly, what can be improved? I think the communication between the pairs has been really awesome, especially since I get to see a lot of notifications when you're chatting. So that's been great. I think maybe communication between the whole team could be improved a little bit, either between like all 4 developers or also with mentors. Just by the end, it seemed like everyone got more on the same page, but I think in the beginning, there were different ideas of some overarching themes for the app. So, and then like the PR communication has definitely been improving. That's great. I think it would be nice if maybe for each week, each PR, we all aim, at least for the developers, to have one comment, even if it's something like, wow, this function is really succinct, great job, but just to dip our toes in to like get more comfortable with doing the review process, because it's uncomfortable in the beginning. So just an idea. Jessica?
Kind of saying it in a little more vague of a way than what maybe Lauren just did, but yeah, just communication has been improving each week, I think, and it's been awesome. And I just think we should just kind of continue to seek out ways to build upon that communication that we're all having. And yeah.
Sky?
Despite early week completion of the ACs, we still haven't merged by today's meeting. I think we should aim to get code merged by Saturday evening at the latest. Especially with like, you know, I sorry to give you a kind of a crap sandwich, because my appreciation was like, you got so much work done early in the week. And then I realized that some of the confusions about how to implement things midweek, you know, blurred it all. So it's not on you, but I think maybe for this next week, we should just try to, you know, have that same vigor towards the early part of the week, but then any kind of extra work, if we do decide to refactor something, can always come in a, you know, some extra work. If we can if the acceptance criteria is clear enough where we can get it implemented by, you know, by midweek, I mean, the first 3 days, or, you know, Friday, Saturday morning, whatever, like get it done. No reason to wait. And I think, you know, part of that's habit. Like we have this cadence, but we could have probably, I mean, based on the original acceptance criteria, we could have merged earlier on and then worked on some of this additional functionality in the week for those who have the time and want to mess about and optimize things, which is, just have to reiterate, is not an expectation. The 5 hours, it sounds like this cohort, a lot of different groups are going well over 5 hours. And we just need to really be clear that like, it's not expected. It's not even something that we promote. But if you happen to, you know, some people have jobs, some people don't, some people have family, some people don't. If you have time and you're learning things, I'm not going to discourage you spending time, but it shouldn't be just like burying your life into TCL. It's not designed to require that much. So take care of yourselves, balance your time.
Nice. James?
Yeah, so you know, this is me just thinking about maybe some of the issues that I've created for myself. Maybe it's just by like looking at the AC and then hopping on a call with whoever, and then we just dig right in. All right, let's go. Let's add this. You know, but maybe like just doing a little more planning. Maybe either before I pair with whoever, or maybe in that, you know, we agree to like just like sit down and talk about like what we need and kind of like map out the you know, the desired result and how do we get there. I feel like I'm the kind of person that I'll just jump in and start cutting. That's just how we're always doing it. But maybe I could benefit from a little bit more organization on that side. And part of that could be tying in kind of like what Lauren was saying. It could be like before any of us pair, getting on Slack and saying, hey guys, how do y'all feel about like, what do you think about you know, this common, you know, approach that we all should like kind of think about? Like, I want to do this, and you know, what do you guys think? And when you want to do that, okay, cool. And then that way, maybe we even are on the same page as a group more. Even though, I mean, especially now that we all have touched a few or probably everything, we all have a better understanding of what we're all working on. So now we can probably visualize a little bit easier the big picture. So, food for thought.
Zenzi?
I don't know how to nicely say this. I'm increasingly frustrated, and I'm just gonna go at it and say it. I'm increasingly frustrated by kind of giving platitudes about managing our time. It only should take 5 hours, but it's not taking 5 hours. It's taking 10 hours. And I think that either there needs to be an acknowledgement that this is a larger project than you originally intended and we have to move forward in a different way, or you just like, you can't tell me the meetings are kind of like you're saying that, oh, you don't have to attend this meeting, take care of yourself, but you're also saying we need you to have this ready by Monday. You have a meeting on Wednesday. Thursday, you need to push changes. Now you want us on Saturday to have it merged. Like, you have to acknowledge that you're adding work. Like, you can't just tell us, oh, this should take 5 hours. How? Where? Like, it just isn't making sense to me, because you're saying one thing, but all of your actions and all of the demands are encouraging a different thing. So on Wednesday, I had to tap out because I only have 5 hours to give. I have to start a job next week. Like, I can only give 5 hours. So if you hit 6 on Wednesday, then you hit 6 on Wednesday. I can't keep pouring time and energy and focus in and being told that I should have somehow managed the beginning of the week better. But the beginning of the week is, we're encouraged to push and finish the acceptance criteria then. So we have to, like, it's a rigid format already. And you're telling us that it's fluid, but it's not. Like, you've already set it up.
Well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. Like the honesty and this isn't some kind of like super fluffy meeting. You're allowed to have these grievances and concerns. I would say that some of it is communication. Some of it is like, like you're saying, should have it putting work in on Saturday. That it wasn't exactly what I said. What I said is that the cadence of the week, you put in so much energy. Both teams put in so much energy early week, that like 5-6 hours that you were talking about. And if we look at it, you met the acceptance, both teams, and I can't speak to both teams right now, but like the way I saw it is both teams had PRs up that met the acceptance criteria, and that the rest of the week was kind of discussions on additional optimizations, additional or disagreements in how things were implemented. And we all certainly need to work on that. But the work was, if you read the letter of the law, the acceptance criteria, it's pretty straightforward. And both teams met those by midweek. The rest was just this kind of like ongoing learning. And was it a bit verbose? Yes. Was it ideal? No. But do certain team members have more time to commit to have those conversations? Yes. And there's no expectation on you to do that. And like, it's certainly a failure on our part if that's, if we're putting pressure on for that. So like, I would love to know how we can do that, because like the whole, like I said, that I'll let other people speak if they have thoughts on this, but the like merge by Saturday is like, yeah, you had most of the work done by Wednesday. You could have merged, and then the people that have the time available can mess around with it if they want. I resent the fact that we've delivered this situation where those conversations create a pressure on other people who may or may not have the time to do it. Like, I didn't have much time. I was very active early in the week, but I didn't have time later in the week. So you and I were kind of in the same bucket there, and I had some guilt about it myself. So yeah, I'm sorry that's kind of the vibe that we're putting out. And so we need to find a way, and I don't have all the answers right now, like how do we match our communications of how the cadence and your time commitments should go with how it actually works out. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on it?
I do. Maybe that will lead to my card, and we can come back to this conversation. So in terms of time management and what we're focusing here in Collab Lab, right? The focus here is, yes, we're working on some code, but what is the objective, right? The objective is the communication and the collaboration part. And I think one thing that we didn't provide guidance or help in is, when you start on coding and pairing, one, understand what the acceptance criteria is asking, right? If it's confusing, then stop. And one thing that Andrew said to me that was like really, really helpful is spend half an hour, right? Your week, you have 5 hours. Spend half an hour. If you're half an hour pairing, you still don't have a clear sense of what you're building, stop, ask for help. You can time box it to half an hour and an hour. So in a week, you have 5. Like, let's say I'm only going to spend 2 hours or 1 hour on this as a pair. And if we hit a roadblock at 1 hour, raise your hand, ask for help. You know, one of us is going to jump in and help and block you. We're hoping that in this 5 hours is you spend X number of time, and then you save the other time for things that we want to focus on, things that are wins, right? Like the point of Collab Lab is not to create the best app ever in this world. This is an exercise in coding some of this stuff. And then the other part is the communication, the collaboration, right? Like the conversations that needs to be had, and that's part of cadence. And the reason we structure this cadence is in a real working environment is this happens, right? There will be differing ideas. There will be, how can you break all these problems down and not spend too much time in that rabbit hole, and to leverage, you know, your mentors, leverage your other team members to jump in and help you move forward in the code, because it's not just about the code, it's the communication. And that is where I feel we need to spend more time in terms of self-code reviewing your PR. If you allocate an hour and you're still stuck, someone should help you get unstuck by 2 or 3 hours so that you leave that 2 hour for this other parts of cadence, right? Like, and I think this is where we try to give a certain structure and it sounds really rigid, then we as a team need to make sure that are we helping with time management and how we can hit that. And then the other part is when you're working in a team environment, a lot of things is communication that I'm seeing, like when an issue is assigned to you, you own it in terms of communicating where you're at. So spending the time to update the status, like whether it's in progress, whether it needs mentor review, all that stuff. Right now, we're helping you move that status, but in reality, when a JIRA ticket is sent to you, you change those things to communicate to your team where you're at. So that there are times when product managers run a report, your engineering manager will run a report to know where things are happening, and they may need to do a presentation and such, right? And they can't check in with every single engineer to know where you're at. They would run a report. So updating and making sure your code review is really clear and concise. It also helps the review process so that your reviewer, it takes time to review and read every single line of code. Is if you spend the time to clarify certain things and make it more concise, your reviewer can come in and look at it and be like, okay, I get a sense of what's going on. And they can spend the time. There are real world situations where if it's not clear, people will not review your PR and they will not give you feedback that is beneficial, and code quality and stuff will just get pushed out. And then when things break, it's going to be not a good situation to be in. So that's the things that I want to point out, that as a team, how can we allocate our time and help each other allocate time so that we can hit all these different parts of engineering cadence that is important. It's not just coding. We need to make time for the other parts. Let's see what else. And I'm going to stop here to make sure. Any thoughts from everybody, or certain things to clarify?
I just wanted to chime in, and I mean, I do agree with, at least personally, with a lot of what Zenzi was saying, just like when it comes to figuring out how to make the 5 hours work is, yeah, it's been like I don't even know how much time I spent the first couple weeks, and I still feel like I did not offer as much as I could have or should have. Especially when it comes to even just preparing for when pairing with somebody, and the amount of time that gets that I feel is necessary to put towards that. I appreciate hearing like what you're saying, Yenli, about the communication aspects and just kind of like real world circumstances where, okay, yeah, the PRs, if you don't have them written out right, they're just going to get, no one's going to pay attention. And that's really good to hear. But yeah, I think especially in the beginning, trying to figure out how in the world to make the 5 hours work, especially if you're thinking about today is 1 hour right away. And then, so we really only have 4 hours to work on the coding and the PRs and all of that. So I think, I do think that you all as mentors have been incredibly available and have been really helpful in that way. I know my mind personally works in a way where I'm thinking, well, even pairing with my partner, they have their own time schedules, and I appreciate being told, yes, we should, if we're stuck at a half hour, stop. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, when are we even going to be able to pair again? What if we can't pair again this week? What if this was our only opportunity, you know? And I know that's just things that we have to work through and figure out. But that is one of the things that kind of runs in the back of my mind when it comes to the 5 hour amount, because I think we all really we want this to look awesome. We want this to work well, and we want it to work well for everybody else. So so the next pair the following week isn't dealing with some fallout from a previous week, you know? So yeah, that's just kind of my input. But I think, yeah, time management is very important, and figuring out how to make it work within the 5 hours in the beginning especially is really hard.
I want to acknowledge that too. And to be honest, in a real job situation, you, as someone who's joining the team, it won't be, oh, this is 5 hours. It will be, here's the task. Code complete is this day. How will you get there as a team, right? How will you get your work done? And sometimes the issue could be very clear, and sometimes it's not. And I think what we're trying to do here in this workshop is to give you a sense of how this engineering cadence is to help you time management and get there, because the organization you join may not have this guidance. So that's the other aspect to think about too.
Just a quick thing, because I think everyone actually has said a lot of really valuable things that I don't need to reiterate, but specifically for what you said, Jessica, I feel like Yenli and Sky and myself, at least when we're talking to each other, it's pretty fast. So my point is that if you guys are stuck on like a Monday, if you ping us, maybe someone will be available, just because I think most mentors are watching. So yeah, especially, or if you give us a heads up, like, oh, we're meeting here and here, maybe one of us can kind of be on call if you hit something, and then it will, yeah, maybe that's the key to everything, is just getting unblocked faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also recognize that, you know, let's say you try to ping us on Monday, right? You spend half hour, you try to ping us, and we are not available. You have the rest of the mentors in this community to ask for help. If you go into, you know, the one that's meant for this cohort, somebody recently were like, I'm stuck, I don't know how to do this. Another mentor, Lewis, like jumped in and like helped her like really quickly. So definitely leverage that, right? Like at a company, it's the same thing. First, you reach to your teammates, you reach to your team mentors, but you know, especially with COVID, like anything can happen. So reach out as far as you can until someone will come and help you within that time frame that you need, because that's the reality of like a workplace. You know, there's only so much you can do, right? And then sometimes if you spend that 3 hours and it still doesn't work and no one is there to solve the code for you, there are cases where, hey, that issue will maybe have to move into the next release cycle. And that is a common thing, right? So if the 3 hours or the 2 hours you can't get it done and you need to spend the time on the communication, let's maybe approach it in that way, because we want to make sure that you get the experience of, you know, the engineering process, the collaboration, the communication, because those are really key to your success in terms of how to get help and how to move forward. And, you know, the whole community is available to you, not just us. I want everyone to remember that. You know, when James had asked for help a few weeks back, where like we just couldn't solve it in office hours, he asked for help in the bigger Slack channel, and everything got solved within like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, and I do want to acknowledge too that I remember earlier this week, Zenzi, you did suggest that, and I believe I was a little more hesitant about it for whatever ridiculous reason. So I want to apologize for that, because I do recall you mentioning, oh, should we put this in the TCL 23 section. So thank you, Yenli, for reiterating that, and apologies to Zenzi for not jumping on board with that as readily as I should have.
Well, I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that, but we could hop to issue since we are over time. And maybe one thing to kind of address the concerns before is that we could, oh, you're fine, Leon. Is that we could kind of step through maybe like a little bit of how the implementation might look and address some of those low-hanging fruit questions. So I will share my screen. I just had to move because my battery was dying. Let's see. As a user, I want to filter my shopping list to make it easier to locate an item in a list. So the idea is you've got a list of, I don't know, let's think how crazy could this become? You've got 1,000 things in your list. That'd be a bit excessive, but you know, it could happen. Let me get rid of my meeting controls. There we go. And so here's actually a mock-up of how that might work. Is that you'll have some kind of input with a description on it. And then you can type there. And when you type in there, the things that you're already, so we're already presenting everything that's in the collection, everything that's been added to that shopping list. So the idea is that we're going to be inserting some kind of functionality here, a function that instead of showing everything in the collection, you'll have a new input and then you'll filter based on that input. And so that's the big chunk of that. Let's see what the acceptance criteria. Display a text field. Okay, we can do that. As the user types into the field, the list should narrow to display only items that contain the text the user has entered in the filter field. And then when the field has text in it, the user should be able to tap a UI element to clear the field. So if we go back here and we look, this doesn't show it, but there should be, you know, some kind of maybe a button that you're adding somewhere above, below, on the sides. It's really up to you to implement this, but that button will probably have a function where when you click it, you will clear whatever is in the input. And the filter text should match any part of the item name. It should not only match from the start of the string. So that's, you know, we dealt with some regex earlier on in the week. So, or earlier on in the TCL, is you'll probably take that text that's in your text field and do some kind of search to find it anywhere in the string. Now, you could, there are a lot of different ways you could research online and see like how people do string matching. It's probably a bunch of different ways to do it right. But if we kind of break this down into the simple bits, what are we going to do? We're going to add a text field to our UI. Then we're going to create a function that listens to that and shows, you know, if it is empty, just show the normal stuff as we always have. But if there's something to use in a regex, then let's use it. We should also have a button to click the X and delete whatever's in that. So there's kind of like two functions that we've talked about so far. And then just some general guidance of you know, how you should filter the string. So for instance, with regex, you can have a specifier. So you can be like, match everything from the start of the string, or you can be like more global and like find it anywhere in here. Does anybody have any questions on how to make this one happen?
So far, no.
Okay. Yeah. Dig into it. And the way, like, just to kind of share like how I work, like a lot of the times I'll get some, you know, user story or some chunk of work, and I feel overwhelmed because I don't know how I'm going to tackle this, or maybe I've already implemented some code and I'm just like, ooh, this is going to require big changes, and it creates, you know, an emotional situation where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to impress my boss and make this happen. I don't know if this functionality is going to require like tearing everything out. And I just always have to go to like, okay, what's like the tiniest little thing that I can do? Okay, cool. I'm going to create a bit of UI. I'm going to just make a text field. That's it. And then I'm going to, you know, yeah. And you kind of just, you step through each one, and then its component parts don't actually, oftentimes I find that they don't actually take that much to get it done. It's when I kind of look at the whole thing as of like, oh, I've got to have this thing that's filtering and changing, and it's like going to totally upend everything we're doing because it's changing the list component. It's like, wait, no, if you kind of go down one by one, like what is the minimal thing to create the input? Well, that's not too bad. Okay, cool. Like that's fine. Okay, well, we're already displaying something. Well, we're pulling that off the collection. What if we just put that collection through like a function that take the collection? We've already been doing some mapping because we've done map, like, because we have a collection of things and we have to, for each one, we generate some, you know, a line item. Well, maybe for each one, we can check to see if it matches a filter and then show it. So you can break it down. But let's hop to the next one. And yeah, as an item, I want my estimated next purchase date to be computed at the time my purchase is recorded in the database, so the app can learn how often I buy different items. So acceptance criteria, when a purchase is recorded, so we know when is this thing going to happen? It's going to happen when the purchase is recorded. So when you click that you purchased something, the estimated number of days until the next purchase date should be calculated and recorded in the database. So, and then here's this little hint, the script at estimates, we already have this thing given to us in the project. Should be used to calculate the next estimated purchase interval. So this one, I think, begs a little bit of digging here. Let's go into the project here. And let's go into our source, go into lib, and go into estimates here. So there's a lot here. This is, you know, big kind of just description of what the function does. Calculate a weighted estimate for the interval until the next purchase. Current purchase a tiny bit less weight than all previous purchases. Okay, so that sounds heavy. That sounds scary. I'm just going to I'm going to look at like, okay, we have a function. We're going to use this. It's called calculate estimate. You're going to give it a last estimate, the latest interval, and the number of purchases. So what this is telling us is that like this is a bit meatier. We're going to have to probably change the data that we're storing in Firestore. So right now we have the last purchase date, right? Like we implemented that. Was it this week? I think James, you can speak to that.
We stored it this week, but when we had initialized last purchase property since the beginning with Noel, but we actually started sending dates this week. Yes.
Cool. So let's make this a little bit simpler. So what is this function to calculate an estimate does a bunch of magic. We don't care about that. Let's just forget about that. But to utilize this function, we need to give it the last estimate. So we did that this week. So whenever you click a line item and you hit purchase, we're going to have the current time get saved to the database. So later on, if we are using this function, what do we pass in there? Well, we pass in that date that we have stored. Cool. Well, latest interval. Okay, what the heck is that? What I would think is I would do, what is the time now? Because we're trying to, what does this interval mean? It means like, well, how long has it been since the last time this thing was purchased? So the latest interval in this case would be that last time, like our current time minus the last time is the latest interval. So you could go like, a time stamp from a week ago and then a timestamp from today, and that would give you 7 days. Cool. So we're going to have to give it the last time, give it the kind of time difference, and then the number of purchases. This is kind of interesting. So we need to tell this formula how many times that we've actually purchased. So that's a new thing. We're not tracking that right now. As far as I understand, it's not in our database. So we're going to have to add, and due to the beauty of NoSQL and the Firebase collections, is we don't have to do any kind of crazy migrations. I think we can just start sending this over. So we can start sending in number of purchases. And what is this going to give you? It's going to give you the return. We can cheat again and look here at the description. It's going to return the estimate number of days until the next purchase. Cool. So now we know, and we can go over this again. We know that we have to give it 3 things. We have to give it what we already have, the last estimate. We have to give it the latest interval. And then, oh, actually, did I speak about that wrong? The last estimate. Do we actually need to store the last estimate as well? Is anybody kind of understanding this? I'm just saying that we're having a discussion. We're not being prescriptive, but yeah, the last estimated purchase interval. I think I might have misspoke there.
Yeah, it looks like.
I think so. Go ahead,
like,
Lauren.
Oh, it just looks like last estimate could be null if the purchases are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
because we could just
Okay, cool. So all right, so we have to track, like we were saying, we have to track the number of purchases. How many times? 0, 1, 2, 3. I think that's going to be pretty easy. We just have to add something to the collection. Whenever you purchase it, just +1 it.
Mm-hmm.
The last estimate, we're probably now rereading this. We're going to need to add something as well, where we store the last estimate. And then we have so we stored, the last estimate that we have, which can also be, can also be null. Yeah.
I think what that is how you guys made a soon, not soon, kind of whatever, they related to a certain number of days. I think you can put that there, but then the point is like, it'll supposedly learn as you buy. So instead of always being every 7 days, after you buy it 3 times, it'll start using, like, you want to save this updated level. Does that make sense? I think.
So cool. So what this is returning is the estimated number of days till the next purchase, but what we're putting in the previous one. So it's basically going to be replacing its own value, it sounds like. Is that correct? because we're going to have the last estimate, but we're going to return a new estimate, and we'll probably be saving that in the estimate, the estimate field for that item.
Yeah, I agree. I think what it is the first time, because you have a null, then you tick that, but as every time that you calculate this, it returns this calculated estimate, it needs to be saved in to use for next time.
Is this does anybody have any questions, or does this seem, this is a chunky, it's a meaty thing to rationalize. I don't think the work is going to be too crazy because you're getting a lot of the heavy lifting here.
Mhm.
But we need to, we're spending some time up front to understand what the heck this thing does. And that's why I'm like happy that we're spending a little bit of time right now on it. But we could, go through an example. Let's see if I can get let me just share my whole screen here. New share desktop. So let's see. Can everybody see my text editor here? Okay, cool. So like, what would we be doing? Like, if we have an item, I'm just going to kind of pseudocode this. We're going to have like, I don't know, we're going to have an item, and it's going to be like cheese. And then what are our current things that we store on it? What is our current schema?
Estimated time to purchase again. Is that 7, 14, or 30?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So then we'll say cheese, and we'll say, yes, we'll just say, which is what, soon?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What other things do we
And
currently store?
last purchase initialized as null.
So let's say for the sake of this one, we have clicked that that button, and that sets it to now. So let's just say that is, I don't know, January 2nd, 2021. And is that all we're tracking right now?
I think so.
Cool. So like, yeah. Like, what question are we answering here, and why are we using this functionality? If we go here, as an item, I want my estimated next purchase date to be computed at the time my purchase is recorded in the database, so the app can learn how often I buy different items. So like, I guess the thing is that we're going to check an item as purchased. We are going to, let's see, not that one. Okay, we're gonna look at this again. We are going to say, what is our, we need to add an item here. So this is where I said, like, our schema is going to change. So like last purchased, but we'll call this like last estimate. And let's just say that, I don't know, we could go two different paths. We can investigate this as like, we could just say this is null. Or we could say that, we could say that this has a date. Let's say that this was, I don't know, February 1st, 2021. I'm just making up dates here. So when we check an item as purchased, we want to, let's go back to the thing. I want to like recalculate my next estimated purchase date. So how are we going to figure out what our next estimated purchase date? This thing is going to give us the number of days until the next purchase. So we kind of want to figure out how many, like figure out at which date we will purchase again. And so what we can do is we can use this thing, use calculate estimate to help. And the way that we're going to do this is we can do like calculate estimate. And then what we're going to put in here is we're going to put in the last estimate, which could be null, but let's just pretend like it has that. So that's going to get our like last estimate. Does that make sense? We have that. And then what's our latest interval? Well, that's going to be, let me throw a bracket in here. That's going to be our latest interval is the number of days between the most recent and previous purchases. So that's going to be like, you could say that that is the last purchased minus now. Again, this is pseudocode. So that'll give you, you want to be able to basically get, you know, the number of days between the last time it was purchased and then when it's being purchased. Well, we just clicked it, so it's now. And then what else do we need to give this function? We need to give it the number of purchases. Well, we don't have that in our schema, so we're going to add it. I'm just going to make something up here, and you know what? That's going to be 5. Cool. So, or null, and we can just do that. So times purchased. And so that function, we kind of, it's not that crazy. We have to give it the last estimate. We got to give it the days between the last time it was purchased and now, and we have that because we have a last purchased already. And then how many times it's purchased, we don't have that yet, but we'll add that. And what is that gonna, that's gonna do some kind of magic, and it's gonna spit out a number of days. I don't know, let's just say it returns 8 days. We'll just say that that's what it gives us. And then if we kind of go back, okay, so the calculate estimate, if we look at our last estimate, what we last estimate is our like estimated, let's see, we want to replace our estimated time, which is like a number of days. So if it returns 8 days, what I'm guessing we'll do, so we use that to replace the let's see, last estimate with current date plus whatever's returned here. So in this case, like we'll just put, you know, plus 8. That's at least how I'm kind of thinking about this problem, is that we have these 3 bits. We have the name. We've got the estimated time, and we've got the last purchase, but we need to add this like last estimate thing, and we need to add this times purchase thing. And then we're going to use those things to pass into this function, and then it's going to give us a number of days and we want to be able to this last estimate is null right now. Nothing in our database has that, but in the future, we want to be able to populate that. So when you click something and you purchase it, we want to be able to use this function to churn out a date. And that's going to be the estimate of like, hey, that's when we think you're going to purchase your cheese next. And we add that to the database, and that date will continue to get refined. And you can dig into this function a bit to kind of see how the math that it's doing, to understand like if you to kind of wait if you're purchasing it soon or less frequently, all that. Does anybody have any questions? This one's kind of a meaty one. Or have I lost everybody in this process? Is my internet connection working?
I'm not saying I fully 100% have my brain wrapped around it, but I can see where it's not going to be as maybe complex or difficult as I thought it was. I feel like once or whoever starts adding those properties to the database and being able to kind of like see how they move through this function, it might really, especially really help understand it.
Yeah, so I mean, the way I'd kind of start looking at it is you can break this down into different bodies of work. Like if we, maybe I'll just chuck these notes, and sorry that these notes aren't, you know, super well prepared. I'm just kind of doing this live. But like the first thing that I might do is being like, okay, well, we don't have the things in our schema. So when do these things become a known deal? I mean, the great thing about NoSQL is we don't have to go migrate anything. We can just chuck data in. So when does name and estimated time and last purchase, when do those become a reality? Well, when we create an item. So you can initialize those things right when an item is created. So we're just gonna like ensure that last estimate and times purchased are created. Alternatively, you could decide to add those things only when something is purchased. It's up to you, but just make sure that those things are created in the database. And then two, the second kind of chunk of work would be we want to, when we check an item, so let's see, when we check an item as purchased, we currently have side effects. You know, like you by, you know, recording that something was purchased and adding a date to last purchased in the database, right? Like we're already adding that. That was this last week's work as we're adding. So now we will have another side effect. Two, actually. The first one is we will use this crazy calculate estimate function to add a date to last estimate. Now you could rename these variables whatever you want. I'm not being prescriptive. You can, last estimate might not even be, because like last estimate could be confusing because, well, it's kind of the current estimate. So maybe it's just estimate. You know, maybe we just call it estimate because it's not really the last estimate if we just added it. So anyhow, we'll use this crazy calculate estimate function to add a date to last estimate. Cool. So we'll add that to that database before we go, and maybe at the same time that we go and change last purchased, we change last estimate. What else are we going to do? We have this times purchased. We will take times purchased, and, you know, depending on the language, you know, you can take and add one. That's going to be pretty easy, I think. So you just have you could initialize it as 0 when you create an item, and then just each time just add 1 to it. So I'll copy these notes over and we can start a thread. And if anybody has any questions, we can just chat about it.
That's a good idea. It also gives us a chance to really like let it sink in and think about it and come back to.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Do we lose? Oh, yeah, gotta go. Okay, cool. All righty. Any final thoughts or questions, or how do we want to divide this work up? Does anybody have any particular attraction to either of the issues?
I mean, while the one you just were going over, Skylar, does sound like one that would be learning a lot from, I will say I'm gravitating towards the first one. But James, what do you, because I'm representing Anna and
Yeah.
I now, where you sitting, James?
Man, That's a tough question. I feel bad. I'm sitting here feeling really bad for Lindsay and everything right now, and I feel like maybe I've contributed in some way to this culture of like, working way more, because I don't know, I feel a little ownership on that. So I don't want to burden or saddle her with like this I think more involved story, but at the same time I also kind of personally want to do it because I like these kind of challenges. So that's a tough call for me.
I guess
Maybe
it's
there'd
just,
be an opportunity to kind of, since you two have very kind of different time availabilities and you're just different in your, like, I don't know, time availabilities and your energy you're willing to or able to put into this right now, and your stress levels. I too feel for Zenzi's situation here. So maybe there's some kind of opportunity to. I don't think this issue is nearly as scary. I feel
Right.
for Zen. I think that she probably saw this and was very nervous about it. And I could understand the same if both of y'all thought this was big, but like, that's why we talked about it so much right now. And that's like the balance, right? Is I talked about it a lot. So I could see where it would seem super scary, but I kind of actually wanted to talk about it to make it less scary. Not sure if I hit the point, but I'm going to share these notes. My commitment is I'm going to share these notes. We're going to start a thread and let's just work through it. I really don't think this is going to take any crazy amount of time. I think it's going to be like, let's just kind of like breadcrumb ourselves. Like, what's the next thing? We need to add this to the database. Okay, what's the next thing? We need to add another thing to the database. It's going to be, and so maybe there's an opportunity, James, if this is something you kind of want to dig into, maybe you can help ensure that Zenzi doesn't spend more than 5 hours, but at the same time is engaged. So I don't know, your office hours or whatever. I hate to kind of put you in the spot, but I think
I want to help the team out, but I don't want to add like weird pressure or anything like that either. So
I don't
like,
think.
I mean, if I'm speaking frankly, and like this, like, she did her, I love this, and I want to like touch everything, and I want to like work on it like 100 hours a week. I mean, I'm being a little bit silly, but I feel like maybe that is contributing to that sort of
No, I don't think.
No.
So,
I don't think it is, because I think you're very clear about. I don't know. I don't think you're contributing in that way, James, at all. And maybe the only thing would just be, and I'm just throwing this out there, I'm not saying it because of anything that I've experienced, but just if, let's say you and Zenzi do work on the one that you're leaning toward, just have it be just a little, just really make sure that you're only doing the acceptance criteria when you're working with Zenzi, and just really keep a timer or whatever it happens to be.
That's a good idea.
Time management thing is really what it boils down to, I think.
Time management
on it.
Time management is one of my strong suits, except for when it comes to coding, just because I love sitting here doing it. Yes, Yanli.
okay, so let's go with this strategy, as in if you want to take this on, time box certain things. Okay, time box it really small increments. And then when you hit that time box of, say, we talked about this, right? You hit that 2 hours with Zenzi, then I think it's fair to say you hit that 2 hours and you can release her from the pairing and you can take it the rest of the way.
Okay. I'm on board with that. And we can also, like we talked about earlier, we can also reach out on Slack to Skylar or the other, whoever. So
I feel like that's something that Zenzi and I kind of ended up working out this past week too, which I was completely fine with, because I was lucky enough to have more time to be able to go over the 5 hours. So it just lucked out, and I felt like it was a very easy movement of responsibility with Zenzi and I, because ultimately the goal was for us to complete what needed to be done this past week, and I feel very strongly that we completed it. So I think as long as like that was my experience, and I thought that it worked out well.
Yeah.
And
good.
one other thing, go ahead.
So if you time box it and she hit her maximum and you're still spinning at this, and if you ever hit like I'm stuck, I think it's also fair to say, hey, anybody else on the team wants to do this with me? And if Jessica's like, oh, I'm done with my task, I want to help. That is cool too, right? And if Jessica doesn't have time and you're like, hey, I want someone to pair with, and you're like, does one of the mentors have time to bring me through to the rest of this, just even for support? It's also fair to say, hey, my partner hit this max, now I need somebody else. Who else would help me? And let's try that approach, because I think that's also a fair thing in terms of like in a real workplace, right? Like someone can be sick, like that happens. So if that person's out, what does the team do? The team jumps in and say, hey, let's work, let's support each other to get to that finish line. So definitely, like, let's support each other and find a strategy and how we can get there, and how, we encourage cadence because we want you to build the confidence to say, hey, I feel that I can merge this PR without any of the mentors. Because when you gain that skill on your own by the end of this cohort, then you can go to your job and say, I can do this, and your teammates will appreciate that, versus like, oh, can I do this? Or waiting till like very end kind of thing, So if we can give you that confidence to do it early on, great. If you don't get there, that's also fine. And how can we help you get there is kind of what I want to contribute to in this team,
One really, really quick thing. I suspect, now that I'm thinking about it more, so the office hours, just so you guys know, was not in my cohort. They added it because people that had extra time were really interested and like wanted to learn more. So I think if we think of the office hours as like exploration time, but getting help with code is earlier in the week, that's really, that'll help shift everything back instead of waiting until Wednesday for help. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Kind of have two wrap up things. Is one, just wanted to address James, like sure, there are dynamics between the different group members. Yeah, but we also equally, if not more important, is that we all have our own personal stuff going on and different availabilities and different, like, don't feel bad about the Zenzi thing at all, because like she's got things going on in her life and her abilities and her ability to commit and time commitments. So like for her, it sounds like it's frustrating that this that this is going over time. So you shouldn't feel bad about that. Your time commitments are different. We all have our own things going on. So but at the same time, we can try to adapt and support each other, because that's teamwork.
I appreciate that, and I try to be honest with that element of my life, that I have that luxury. I mean, really is what it is, to be able to do that. So and again, in all honesty and frankness, I'm happy. Like, I don't want to be here just driving the ship on myself. What I am happy to do is to be the work mule. If you say, hey, send me this feature, I know I have this feature idea, but I cannot do it, just send it to me and I'll put it in. I'm happy to do that.
Cool.
But so it's not my work, but I'm happy to kind of be that guy.
And that brings me to my second point. Is I feel like we have this cadence, we have this habit, and maybe we haven't done the best job of explaining it. Like, if you can get the acceptance criteria done in an hour on day one, like, by all means do it. And so don't, like, I feel like I've done this in my job. I'll get like some body of work and it seems meaty, and so maybe I draw it out longer. Not like I'm being lazy, but I just kind of am like, well, it's gonna take, I have a week to do it, so it's gonna take a week. So then I kind of like set my cadence of how I'm gonna do that, and I put too much time into research. Like, I use the Pomodoro method. So I have like a little timer and just set like 20 minutes, bam, I'm going to do this. I'm going to add the two things to the database, and I'm going to figure out how to call this function. And then like, you'd be surprised. I'm like, oh, that was only 20 minutes. If I do this like 2 or 3 more times, bam, I've got the acceptance criteria. Is that going to work every time? No, because there be dragons, and you're going to have to go and learn things, and you're going to hit some kind of edge case. But the core, I guess what I'm saying is, like, the acceptance criteria, the meat of it, you can probably get done in a few Pomodoros and then, a few 20 minutes working sessions. And then then you've got like all this extra time to deal with those edge cases and polish up the PR and all that, instead of it being like, I spent 5 hours on getting the basic code done, and then now I have to put in that other 5 to 10 hours, and then we're all, you know, and then everybody's overtime and burnt out and all that. So yeah, I'd say let's like start that for this particular issue. Let's like, I'll put those notes, as kind of janky as they might be, in the thread, and we'll just kind of like start going from there. So I think that's kind of like keeping communications early so that we can also catch any, like if we start going off the rails or something, like if I've led you wrong and we start realizing that maybe there was a problem, then we can figure it out today or tomorrow instead of Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Right.
Because I don't want to do that. I don't want to lead you wrong.
So Jessica, do you want to merge first and then I'll clean up whatever? Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sure. And if you, I know last week, I could have been a little better about clarifying time stuff. If you want someone hanging out with you while you're doing the merge and you want to kind of set a time, I'm more than welcome to do that. But generally speaking, yeah, I can merge first and then jump on and holler if you want a set of eyes hanging around.
Definitely.
Cool. Also, James, for the refactoring work you did, I love that you called out, like, don't merge this until after certain issues. That's really great. So let's definitely wait till all the other PRs merge, everything's cool, then do yours.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I made a mistake. I just made a branch off a branch and oops. So.
No, I think it's fine and it's good, right? This is the learning, and you'll get practice with merge conflicts and stuff, and you'll just build your confidence in those skills for your job. So it's not a big deal. So just let's all these extra work you're doing, let's keep track of it. Let's make sure we communicate to the team that, you know, this is extra and you have the time, and that it's not expected of everybody else. And let's make sure we keep communicating and make choices that we're not creating more work for other people. Yeah, I would definitely love to see a demo of rebasing, because I am super weak in rebasing. I'm scared of rebasing.
I don't even know what it means. So
I like to see a demo of it and like how to do it, because whenever I hear rebasing, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I've heard it, but I don't know what it means. So.
It's kind of, you know, like Stash, where you can like kind of cubby some code away. The way I would describe rebasing is you're basically like taking all the commits that you added onto whatever branch that you're on and like yanking them out, holding them over here, and then going to another branch and then slapping them on top, which sometimes can go horribly wrong if those two branches have diverged a lot. But it can be nice if you're like, oh, I was accidentally like, my commits are sitting on top of this other branch over here, and I actually want to take these two, this 1, 2, 3, whatever commits, and put them onto main branch or any other branch. Like, you can kind of just take that stack, go here and put it, because if you think of git log, like you see the commits stacked up. So that's kind of what it does. But I'd be happy to record a little.
I don't know, did that really apply in this situation where we did a bunch of work on, you know, our acceptance criteria, and then I from there created a new branch off of that. So you know, that's a lot of changes.
That should be easy, because the changes are going to be applied to main, and so rebasing it to main, it's going to be essentially the same diff.
Okay.
Like because those, I mean, maybe there'll be some merge conflict with the other team's stuff, but then I'd be happy to dig through that. But yeah, one thing at a time. Let's hop off the call. Let's get our Sundays rolling, and I'll start that thread. And all
right,
yeah, looking forward.
Sounds good.
I'll post in the Slack when I believe I'm done merging, just so that I did it right and everything. And then did we decide who's taken what tasks for this coming week? It sounds like
so I assigned them. So number 9, if the filtering the shopping list,
okay, cool,
is you and Anna.
Sounds good.
And then number 2, the second one here, Z and James. So Yeah, those are good. Whenever these are approved, whenever you merge, just chuck them into merged project
do.
here.
Yep.
Keep things kind of neat, but
Yep.
otherwise, see you async on Slack.
Cool. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
See you
All right.
guys.